The narrative surrounding radio frequency identification, or RFID, is a complex tapestry woven from threads of technological innovation and profound societal fear. At its core, the story of RFID is one of efficiency, a quest to streamline the chaotic logistics of a rapidly globalizing world. Yet, this narrative of progress is shadowed by a darker, more persistent tale, a conspiracy theory that sees these tiny chips as instruments of ultimate control. This counter-narrative speaks to a deep-seated anxiety about surveillance, personal autonomy, and the encroaching power of an unseen authority. The conspiracy posits that RFID chips, small enough to be implanted under the skin, are the linchpin in a plan for mass human tracking. It is a vision of a future where every individual's movement, every transaction, and every association is monitored and recorded. Proponents of this theory often point to the technology's origins in military and espionage applications as foundational evidence of its nefarious potential. The technology's roots can indeed be traced back to the Second World War, where it was born from radar systems. The British developed an identify friend or foe, IF system, a primitive precursor to modern RFID, to distinguish Allied aircraft from enemies. This system used a transponder on the plane to reply to ground-based signals, a simple call and response to prevent friendly fire. A more direct ancestor was a passive listening device developed by the Soviet Union in 1945, ingeniously hidden within a gift to the US ambassador. Known as the Thing, this device was a passive bug, activated by an external radio signal, demonstrating the core principle of passive RFID. The theoretical groundwork for RFID was more formally laid out in a 1948 paper by scientist Harry Stockman. His publication, Communication by Means of Reflected Power, articulated the scientific basis for the technology we know today. Commercial applications began to emerge in the 1960s with the development of electronic article surveillance, EAS tags. These tags, designed to deter shoplifting, represented the first widespread public-facing use of a similar radio frequency technology. The year 1973 marked a crucial milestone with the awarding of the first patents specifically for RFID technology. Mario W.W. Cardullo received a patent for an active RFID tag, one that contained its own power source and rewritable memory. Simultaneously, Charles Walton patented a passive transponder used as a keyless entry system, a common application even today. Throughout the 1980s, RFID found its niche in industrial and logistical applications, far from the public eye. It was used for electronic toll collection on highways, streamlining the flow of traffic and revenue. The technology also proved invaluable for tracking livestock, allowing for better management of large herds. In factory automation, RFID tags help to monitor products as they move through complex assembly lines. 1990s brought standardization and miniaturization, making the technology cheaper and more versatile. IBM developed an ultra-high frequency UAF system, significantly extending the potential read range of the tags. It was in the early 2000s, as the technology became smaller and more powerful, that the conspiracy narrative truly began to flourish. Discussions about implanting chips in humans for medical or identification purposes moved from science fiction to plausible reality. This leap in possibility ignited fears that had long been simmering in the cultural subconscious. The idea of a spy chip began to circulate with fervor in nascent online forums and on conspiracy-focused websites. Certain religious groups interpreted these potential implants through the lens of eschatology, linking them to the mark of the beast. This biblical prophecy from the book of Revelation describes a mark required for all commerce, which resonated deeply with the technology's potential. The narrative found its focal point in 2004 when the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, gave its approval for human implantation. A company named Verichip had developed a chip intended to give emergency room doctors instant access to a patient's medical records. Despite its stated humanitarian purpose, this approval was seen by many as the crossing of a critical threshold. To skeptics, it was the first official step towards a future where mandatory chipping was not just possible, but inevitable. The conspiracy theory solidified, alleging a secret plot by a shadowy global elite, often referred to as the New Worlder. The goal, according to the theory, was to use these chips to establish a global surveillance state and eliminate all personal freedom. However, the technological reality of RFID presents significant obstacles to such a grand and sinister vision. The vast majority of RFID tags are passive, meaning they possess no internal power source. These passive tags can only be activated and read from an extremely short distance, typically a few inches to a few feet. They require a dedicated RFID reader to emit a signal, which the tag then reflects with its stored information. The idea of tracking an individual across a city, let alone globally, with a passive chip is a technological fantasy. Active tags, which do have a battery, offer a longer read range but come with their own set of limitations. Their power source makes them significantly larger and gives them a finite lifespan, requiring eventual replacement. A chip small enough to be injected through a standard hypodermic needle would be far too small to house a functional power source. Furthermore, the infrastructure required for mass tracking would be anything but secret. It would necessitate a conspicuous network of powerful RFID readers installed on nearly every street corner, in every building, and across all public spaces. The logistical and financial challenge of creating and maintaining such a network would be astronomically prohibitive. Then there's the issue of data management. The sheer volume of information generated by tracking billions of people in real time is staggering. Processing, storing, and analyzing this constant flood of location data would require computational power far beyond our current capabilities. The conspiracy theory saw a dramatic and unexpected resurgence during the COVID-19 pandemic, starting in 2020. A baseless and widely circulated claim alleged that newly developed vaccines contain microchips for population control. This theory often implicated philanthropist Bill Gates as the mastermind behind the supposed plot. The narrative spread like wildfire across social media platforms, amplified by algorithms and echo chambers. Medical and technical experts repeatedly debunked these claims, explaining the scientific impossibility of the scenario. It clarified that a microchip capable of transmission would be far too large to pass through the bore of a vaccine needle, despite the lack of any credible evidence. The theory persisted, fueled by a deep-seated distrust in governments and pharmaceutical companies. In reality, RFID technology today is mundane and ubiquitous, integrated seamlessly into the fabric of modern life. It exists in the credit card you use for contactless payments, a form of RFID known as near-field communication, NFC. It is embedded in modern passports, allowing for faster and more secure processing at border controls. It is used to track inventory in retail, ensuring that the products you want are on the shelves when you look for them. It helps manage complex supply chains, following a package from a warehouse in one hemisphere to your doorstep in another. It is the chip that helps you find your lost pet, a tiny beacon of hope for a worried owner. The story of the RFID conspiracy is not truly about the technology itself. It is about the human fear of losing control, of becoming a mere data point in a system too vast to comprehend. It reflects a struggle to find meaning and agency in a world that feels increasingly automated and impersonal. While the conspiracy of mass tracking via RFID chips remains firmly in the realm of myth, the anxieties it represents are very real. The debate forces a necessary and ongoing conversation about privacy in the digital age. It questions the balance between security and freedom, convenience and autonomy. We must consider where the line is drawn between a helpful tool and an intrusive monitor. Technology itself is neutral, a simple tool for identification and data transfer. Its application, however, is shaped by human intention and societal values. The fear of the chip is a fear of unaccountable power. It is a modern manifestation of an ancient fear of the unseen forces that shape our lives. The myth persists because it provides a simple answer to complex questions about power and technology. It creates a clear villain in a world where power structures are often diffuse and opaque. Understanding the technical limitations of RFID is the first step in demystifying the conspiracy. Knowledge serves as an antidote to the fear that grows in the absence of information. The real conversation should focus on data privacy and the ethical use of the information we willingly share. Our digital footprints, created by social media, online shopping, and search histories, are far more revealing than any chip. This existing data ecosystem is where the real potential for surveillance lies. It is a system we've opted into, often without fully understanding the terms. The RFID chip conspiracy, therefore, serves as a powerful, if inaccurate, metaphor. It is a cautionary tale for a society grappling with the profound implications of a connected world. The myth endures not because of evidence, but because it speaks to a truth about our collective anxieties. Ultimately, the question is not whether we are being tracked by a chip, but how we navigate a world where our data is the most valuable commodity. Conspiracy is a distraction from the more subtle, yet more pervasive, systems of tracking we already live with. So, while the chip remains a myth, the quest for privacy and autonomy in the face of technology is the defining struggle of our time. The origins of this fear are not new, but have been adapted for a technological age. Dystopian literature from the 20th century explored these themes long before RFID was a household name. Authors imagined worlds where the state exerted total control over the individual. These stories planted the seeds of suspicion towards any technology that could facilitate such control. The fear is not of the silicon and copper itself, but of the potential for its misuse by human hands. Every new technology that enhances connection also enhances the potential for surveillance. The telephone, the internet, and now the Internet of Things all follow this dual-use pattern. The RFID chip became a perfect symbol for this duality, a tool of convenience that could be a tool of oppression. Conspiracy theories often thrive in moments of rapid technological or social change. They provide a sense of order and explanation in a world that feels chaotic and unpredictable. The narrative of a secret cabal is more comforting to some than the idea of systemic, leaderless change. This is why evidence and logical debunking often fail to persuade true believers. The belief is not rooted in facts, but in an emotional and psychological need for certainty. The myth of the chip is a story we tell ourselves about our deepest fears. It is a modern folktale, a ghost story for the digital age. The actual applications of RFID continue to expand in practical, non-threatening ways. Libraries use it to allow for self-checkout and to easily track their collections. Hospitals use it to track expensive equipment and ensure it is where it needs to be in an emergency. Event management uses RFID wristbands to manage access and create interactive experiences. These uses demonstrate the technology's value in creating efficiency and security on a small, manageable scale. The gap between this reality and the conspiratorial fantasy is immense. Bridging this gap requires education and open dialogue about both technology and fear. It requires acknowledging the legitimacy of the underlying anxieties about privacy. We must address the real privacy concerns of our age rather than chasing technological phantoms. The future of personal data will be shaped by legislation, corporate ethics, and individual choices. The RFID chip conspiracy, in the end, is a symptom, not the disease. The disease is a growing sense of powerlessness in a complex world. And for that, the cure is not technological, but deeply human: trust, transparency, and community. The fear of being watched is a primal human anxiety, now projected onto silicon. An RFID chip is a tiny radio transponder, a radio receiver, and a transmitter. The Verichip Corporation's FDA approval in 2024 was a watershed moment for these fears. Its intended use was for accessing medical records in an emergency. Critics, however, saw it as a dangerous precedent for personal liberty. The technology's limitations are its most significant barrier to nefarious use. A global tracking system would require an impossible infrastructure. The power requirements alone make the concept unfeasible with current physics. The pandemic-era theories represented a fusion of health fears and technological paranoia. These narratives often ignore the long, documented history of legitimate RFID applications. From logistics to livestock, its practical benefits are undeniable. The myth persists by tapping into a powerful vein of anti-establishment sentiment. It simplifies complex societal anxieties into a single, tangible enemy. The real threat to privacy is often less dramatic, hidden in terms and conditions. Our voluntary digital exhaust creates a far more detailed portrait of our lives. The RFID chip is a scapegoat for these more abstract and pervasive concerns. Thus, the conspiracy is a cultural artifact, reflecting our times. It is a story about the tension between humanity and the tools it creates. The path forward requires critical thinking, not fearful rejection. Ultimately, the power lies not in the chip, but in our collective ability to shape a just technological future.